Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the members for being here tonight for this important debate about the situation that's going on in Canada and in my riding and in the riding north of me in Saskatchewan. I will be sharing my time with the member from Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman, and I know he's got some things to talk about in Manitoba in regards to the impact it's having on people of Manitoba. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I landed on Friday into Saskatoon at the airport, it was like I landed in another world. You would swear you were in eastern Canada in a fog, but it wasn't fog, Mr. Speaker, it was smoke. The airplane could probably not see across the runway. They were definitely on full instrumentation when they landed, no question about that. Getting off the plane as they opened the door, you could just smell the smoke coming into the cabin of the plane. It was something that I've experienced forest fires and have experienced the forest fires in previous years, but this in the city of Saskatoon was something new, I think, to everybody there. It kind of gives you the sense just how grave the situation is in Saskatchewan. Last week I reached out to the mayors, Reeves, to talk about what was happening in their communities, and I want to talk a little bit about that today and give you a situation update in Saskatchewan so this House is aware of what's going on there and some of the actions that are taking place, and then highlight some of the amazing people that are working in the scenes and behind the scenes to help fight the fires, but take care of the evacuees as they're displaced and trying to deal with their stressful situations as they're being moved because of the fire. You know, right now, the largest fire is just outside of Candle Lake. Candle Lake's a resort village with lots of people that live there year-round. They have a volunteer evacuation going on at this point in time. They put in a 100-meter berm along the highway to give them a bigger area to stop the flames from coming towards the community. Basically, they're doing everything they can to protect their community from fires, and they've been getting lots of support from the provincial government and SPCA. There's extensive fires north and northeast of Prince Albert. Last night we seen the evacuation of L'Orange. You know, that was a scary event for a lot of people. They had basically told to pack up for supplies for at least 3 days, if not more. And they made the trek from L'Orange to Prince Albert. And then from Prince Albert, I understand they're being displaced in different cities around Saskatchewan. Sucker River, Whiten Bay, English Bay, Namibian subdivisions were all issued evacuation orders on Monday. Like I said, L'Orange has been evacuated. As of Tuesday, there's 20 active wildfires in the province, with 7 considered contained. Air quality warnings are still in effect for much the entire north. At least 20 communities have been evacuated so far in Saskatchewan. 8,000 people have been evacuated, with the Premier saying today that he estimates it could be as high as 15,000 in the next 3 or 4 days. The Shoe Fire, currently the largest in the province, has prompted the closure of Highway 165 and the evacuation alerts for several communities, including East Trout Lake, Wayland Bay, Narrow Hills, and Little Bear Lake. These are a list of evacuation areas: Lower Fishing Lake, Purple Lake, East Trout Lake, Little Bear Lake, Narrow Hills Provincial Park, White Swan, Wayland Bay, Brabant Lake, Hall Lake, Namibian Lake, Sucker Lake, Walden Bay, English Bay, the Foran Mine and McCalvey Bay, Jan Lake, Pelican Narrows, Creighton, Denair Beach, Wayakwan, Resort Subdivision of Ramsey Bay, Sturgeon Landing, Northern Hamlet of Timber Bay, Molansas, I'm probably pronouncing it, Molanas, and Resort Village of Candle Lake is a voluntary evacuation. The map, if you look at it, Mr. Speaker, is one of concern. These fires are in an area where it's just tinder dry. When I was home on the weekend, I was walking in my grass, and the grass actually crunched under your feet. It's so dry. We haven't had any effective rainfall pretty well all spring. And as we look at what's coming up for the weather and the wind changes that have been happening, it just creates more concerns. And really, we are in the hands of God in a lot of ways, and we are praying for rain. One of the issues that we need to deal with, of course, is air quality. So if you have, for example, seniors, young people, young women, pregnant women, people who work outdoors, people involved in strenuous activities, people with chronic health conditions like cancer, diabetes, lung and heart conditions, including asthma, mental illness. Air quality is important to them. And of course, it's creating a scenario where people can't go outside because the air quality is so bad. And that air quality warnings is right across the north. And like I said, it's gone as far as into Saskatoon and Regina. And we hear stories of it actually, the smoke going into the northern states and into other parts of Canada. if there's a good story about this, it's people coming together. And I have to say, I'm so proud of the constituents that I have and that I get lucky to represent. You know, whether it's putting together a group of people to make sandwiches for the firefighters, volunteer fighters, whether it's RM Buckland's firefighting crew lending the water truck to SPCA, whether it's taco time in Prince Albert making tacos for firefighters and evacuees. There's so many examples of people coming together to help each other out. It actually, in some ways, is a true community building, similar to what we used to see in the early 1900s when, you know, the province was being settled. People working hand in hand together, saving their communities, protecting each other's farms. Along the Torch River, there's an area there that is really dry, and there's lots of houses along the northern fringe there, working together to protect those houses and those farms. You know, that's something that's been ongoing for the last week and a half, working late into the night, early in the morning, and nobody grumbling and nobody complaining. You know, they're doing what they have to do to save each other's houses and their homes. That is the good part. Now, with this, there's always some bad parts too. You know, the fact the fires happened, a good portion of them sounds like they were man-made. Today, there was an individual arrested who was actually lighting fires along one of the highways. Like, who's so stupid? Like, really? And that's the type of thing that really is frustrating, because there's so many people that are negatively impacted on fires, and then you see somebody doing something as stupid as this. This has had a major impact on communities. You know, even in the north, as we look going forward, we've lost telephone lines, we've lost power grids, the highways are closed. These things aren't built overnight and rebuilt overnight, so it's going to require a lot of work in this region to get it back to normal once the fires are put out and people return home. You know, one thing Premier Moe has talked about, and I'll just talk about it quickly, Mr. Speaker, is the need for surge capacity and a federal water bomber fleet. There needs to be something in place so that when we have fires throughout Canada, we have the ability to react quickly and move resources where they're required. And I think that's something the federal government should talk with the provinces about. Is this something that we should be managing in light of what's happening over the last few years? Whether it's in British Columbia like it was last year, or it could be in Quebec next year, it's in Saskatchewan, Manitoba this year. It seems like there's a need for that surge capacity to take the expertise and move them to the fire location and deal with the fires. You just can't take somebody off the street and say, go fight forest fires. The fire that we have in Saskatchewan is so violent, for lack of a better word, you can't take somebody that doesn't know what they're doing and put them in the bush to fight that fire. You need trained professionals. And a lot of those trained professionals, like First Nations people, have been doing that year after year, so you have to rely on them. So you can't just take somebody, you know, basically and say, hey, go fight fires tomorrow. That doesn't work. You have to rely on the people that know the territory, that know how to properly fight fires, know how to evacuate when they need to evacuate or retreat when they need to retreat. And, you know, we've got that expertise in Saskatchewan. We just don't have enough of it. And, of course, you've got to keep in mind, too, when you're running water bombers and helicopters, those pilots time out. And even though that hardware is sitting on an airport, you know, it could still be going. We just don't have the people and the personnel to actually operate that hardware in a 24-hour day cycle. Cats, things like that. I know in our communities, the farmers, a lot of them have that type of capacity, and they're using it. They're doing berms, they're doing fire breaks, they're being proactive, trying to make sure that they're protecting each other. You know, Mr. Speaker, it's really a sad event that's happened here. And like I said, in some ways it's brought people together, but in other ways it's really sobering of the power of Mother Nature. You know, as I talked to the Mayor of Prince Albert, one of the things we discussed was as we receive evacuees and as we understand the stresses that they're facing, what can we do to help? How can we help the kids that aren't going to school? Can we do some sports events? They're talking about opening up their leisure center. They're talking about maybe the Prince Albert Raiders will do ball hockey. We're looking at different ideas to keep people active and busy. And we're open to other ideas if other communities have had things that they've done in the past that have been effective with helping the evacuees deal with the stress of not being at home. We look forward to having that information and any of those ideas so that we can take care of these people as they go through this stress. I'm proud of the people that are riding Prince Albert. I'm proud of what they're doing. I'm proud of how they're stepping up. I'm proud to represent them, and I want to thank them for putting me here. It is an honor to represent them. I just wish the first speech in the House would have been something different rather than talking about forest fires. But that's what we have here today. So thank you for your time.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? Member for Calgary Confederation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to everybody on the ground who's been working to fight this terrible tragedy and make right what has been made wrong by nature here. I appreciate the speed with which everybody's worked, including the ministers. I know how hard these situations are to manage, and my sincere thanks to all involved keeping people safe. The one thing I wanted to ask the member about is the long-term effects of this, and if he could give his thoughts on this here. I worked for the government of Alberta, and we found that one of the challenges with an event like this is it's often much longer lasting than people imagine. You have an event, the world is watching, your country is there in very big ways for you, and then you go home. Then your house is rebuilt if it's been lost, and life is supposed to go on. But a year later, that is when some of the real mental health challenges can occur, and the country is not there. So I'm wondering if you could react to that, give comments on what you think should happen long-term for mental health supports for your community.
Before I allow the member for Prince Albert to respond, it's going to happen a lot tonight. Through the chair to the member, I have no opinions. The member for Prince Albert.
Speaker, I've made the same mistake twice tonight, and I've been here for 17 years, so I apologize again, and it's going to happen, like you said. You know, you raised some really good points, and that tends to what happens. You know, you've taken care of the individuals as they've been away from home. You've making sure that you've done everything you can to make their life as comfortable as possible, but then they go home. Well, in this situation in Saskatchewan, they could be going home to something where there's no power, no telephone, because those systems have been wiped out by the fire. We don't know what the highways are going to look like once the fires have gone through the highway system, and a lot of places, the communities that they're going back to, they have one way in and out. That's basically that highway. So there's lots of things on the logistical side that need to be dealt with for sure. When you talk about mental health and items like that, the First Nations in the northern part of the province, some of them have some really good individuals that are working on mental health. We just got to make sure we empower them, that they're there to take care of their individuals and help them progress through this tragedy.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The member for Parkland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank my colleague for raising, particularly Candle Lake. I know we have a mutual friend who holds that community very dear, and I'm glad he brought that up. Something that he talked about in terms of what Premier Moe was talking about, this surge capacity with water bombers. We know that building water bombers is something that can't be done overnight. We have de Havilland now outside of Calgary that is building world-class water bombers, but unfortunately all the orders for the foreseeable future are going to European countries. There is technology, there is equipment in this country to retrofit Hercules, military aircraft, to deliver water bombing. I wanted the members' thoughts about, with the military being increasingly called towards natural disasters, what needs to be done to ensure that the military is well funded and supported so that they can do whatever job they're asked to do, including fighting natural disasters. Thank you.
Member for Prince Albert.
Well, I thank the member for his question. That's a great question. What is the role of military when it comes to forest fires and emergencies? Our military is spread very thin, and heaven forbid if they're required to go somewhere else in the world, and we still have the scenario going forward here in Canada, that they could handle all that at the same time. He also makes a good point about the abilities of Canadian industry to build water bombers, we have all that technology here in Canada. We just have to commit to it and say that this is something that we make a priority. This government has, over the last few years, has watched Canada burn. It has done nothing proactively to create a scenario where there was resources put in place to actually be proactively and be there for the Canadians. I'd encourage this government to change that view, actually have that fleet in place, sit down and talk to the premiers about how this fleet will run and operate and fund, and actually make sure Canadians are taken care of, because it's our communities, it's our futures that's at stake.
Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll get a chance to expand on it. But, one of the things that really impressed me is when I was able to visit one of the evacuation centers is some of the volunteers, in particular, some of the groups, the nonprofits that are out there. And one of the thoughts that came across my mind is maybe we do need to get a better coordination of the many different volunteer organizations and groups that are out there. And this is where provinces can work with Ottawa and vice versa and have developed maybe some sort of a registry of sorts. And I'm interested in his thoughts on that sort of a concept.
The member for Prince Albert.
For his question. It's interesting too, because I was just talking to a lady from Facebook who said they've got the ability to bring these organizations together so that you can go on Facebook and find it. So there's solutions out there. It's putting our heads together and actually finding a mechanism so they're all in one place to actually activate them. So he brings up a good idea, and I think it's something, again, we should consider and proceed. Maybe that's something the committee could take into a study and see what that looks like. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.